Okay, today we're joined by one of the most influential and powerful independent journalists, Laura Loomer. She is known for her unapologetically bold stance on a range of issues. Laura has made headlines as a political activist, journalist, and social media personality. Whether you agree with her or not, there's no denying her impact on conservative media and the wider political conversation. In today's interview, we'll dive into her views, her motivations, and what she sees for the future of American politics. Laura, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Laura, so you've been on the news a lot, even in the Korean side, South Korea. So you wanted to be involved in screening the social media profiles of foreign students who want to study in the United States. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I've made a name for myself, not just through my investigative reporting, but also through my vetting and
Yes.
my very public and viral exposés of what I call the vetting crisis at the White House and how it relates to Biden holdovers or Obama holdovers or people who are historically very hostile to President Trump. President Trump still having positions within the Trump administration, either because they didn't go detected in the transition team or because they lied throughout the transition process, or whoever was in charge of reviewing their application didn't catch or review all of their extensive past political history and their social media comments about President Trump or their previous social media activity as it relates to criticizing conservative policies or propping up Obama era policies. And so I was watching the news this morning and I saw a little flash come across the screen about how the Trump administration, in addition to revoking the visas of a lot of CCP tied foreign students and jihadi students, they now want to add social media screening to the application process for foreign students who want to come to our country to study when they apply for their visas. And so, given the fact that I've been pretty aggressive when it comes to immigration. When I ran for Congress, I campaigned on an immigration moratorium, and I'm pretty outspoken about the threat of China and the threat of the CCP and my desire to see more of these Islamic students deported from our country because of their anti-Semitic activities on college campuses. I made an innocent post saying, "Oh wow, this sounds like a dream job. I would love to help in this vetting process. Sign me up." And of course, the media loves to make everything more dramatic than it is. So,
It's a good thing.
my innocent little tweet, I guess now has turned into a Daily Beast hit piece where they say I'm begging for a job. I was actually just kind of poking fun at the fact that, I'm very tough on
Yeah.
immigration and I'm very good at vetting, but the media loves sensational drama.
I mean, at this point, Laura, everybody knows, when the Daily Beast report that, you should take it as a badge of honor because people already know that the mainstream media is spreading lies, disinfo, and misinfo. So you don't need to take offense on that. And I think many people are actually, I have personal friends telling me that you have been on the forefront. They really are rooting for you, all the things that you uncovered. They always just nitpick about comments that you made here and there. Even Trump made comments here and there, and the mainstream media would pick on, those kind of
Well,
inappropriate comments.
they don't
Everybody
actually.
says
The
them.
thing is
Yeah.
that they never actually have anything to dispute what I say. They call me
Uh,
names, but you notice they never say I'm wrong, right? They'll never say, "Oh,
exactly.
she's wrong" or "she's factually incorrect" or
Hmm.
"this is actually wrong." They never say that because they actually can't dispute the factuality of my reporting and the
Hmm.
things that I'm uncovering, and so they just result to insults and false accusations and smears. But honestly, I don't even care anymore in terms
Yeah.
of these ridiculous pieces where they try to take my tweets out of context because it's just there's so many hit pieces on a daily basis. It's impossible to keep up with all of them. There's
Hmm.
so much work to do as it relates to combating and exposing and identifying key figures within the deep state and trying to help President Trump codify his agenda, hold our own Republican majority accountable for their inaction on codifying President Trump's agenda, their inaction on impeaching judges. There's a lot going on there, and I know you're a Korean journalist. Just this week, I reported on a Korean judge. You
Yes,
had a
you did.
Korean judge
Just
who
at the nick
shut
of
down
time.
President Trump's executive order to shut down the Department of Education on grounds of abuse of DEI policies, which are now in violation of President Trump's executive order. In addition to their proliferation of the LGBTQ agenda in taxpayer-funded public schools. And so it's interesting because, well, we can pull up the report and you can show your audience, but it turns out that the Korean judge, has a Korean wife who uses pronouns, and she's the principal of a DEI company, and the Korean judge also has a transgender son. So,
Oh,
you
she has a
know,
transgender son. I did not know that. Okay.
yeah. So they have a
All of them.
transgender son. His name is Marshall June, and Marshall likes to dress up in little skimpy outfits with fairy wings and pretend that he's a girl. Yes.
This whole thing is just ridiculous. You recently talked about Bill Clinton going to South Korea. You were the
hmm
first journalist out there. I don't know. You got some tip. You were way ahead. And why do you think Bill Clinton went to South Korea? Is it because of the upcoming presidential election that's going to happen come June 3rd?
Personally, I was very curious about why Bill Clinton was going to South Korea, because generally, if the Clinton Foundation has planned travel, they announce it on their website. They have a pretty prominent display on the front page of their website that
Yeah.
documents all of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's travel. And generally when a former president travels abroad, it's for some kind of a event. If it's not for a private vacation, it's some kind of event or speaking engagement. And so I got a tip that Bill Clinton was going to be traveling, and it hadn't been reported anywhere. And so I broke the news. I was able to confirm it. He did, in fact, travel abroad to South Korea with a full Secret Service detail. And it's kind of interesting because the elections are coming up on June 2nd. So that's less than a week away, right?
June
Next
3rd. Yeah.
week. I believe that's Monday, right? The
hmm
elections are on Monday in South Korea. And so when you look at Bill Clinton's history from his time as a president and his involvement, and again, I was just a child when Bill Clinton was president, but if you go back and you examine his
Yeah.
record
hmm
on foreign policy, right, he received a lot of criticism for his policies in
Yeah.
Korea and his handling of foreign policy with Korea. And so I just started thinking to myself, well, why would Bill Clinton be going to South
South Korea at
Korea?
this time.
And it just made me think to myself, well, perhaps there's further CCP or Chinese efforts to destabilize the region. We've seen that China has an interest in destabilizing places like Japan, right? We saw the assassination of their leader, and we now
Abe.
see a lot of there have been many reports documenting the CCP funding of civil unrest in South Korea to try to create a communist takeover. And of course,
Exactly.
that's why we saw the implementation of martial law briefly in
Yeah.
South Korea, which
Uh-huh.
made international headlines. And people thought that it was, a crazy conspiracy theory that the president of the South Korea was trying to prevent a communist takeover. But when you look at the political makeup and all these different factions, and now these factions are here in the United States of America. I've actually been documenting a lot of the Asian influence inside these protests as it relates to the Palestinian protests, the pro-Gaza
hmm
protests, and the Tesla takedown protests. Many
Yeah.
of the organizers who we've documented, who are organizing these anti-Trump violent protests in many instances where they're vandalizing property. They're Asian, right? Some of them are
They're
Korean, some of them
they
are
were Koreans.
Korean communists, some of them are Chinese communists. And so it's really interesting. So when President Trump talks about how we need to crack down on foreign influence and foreign students, he's absolutely right. I don't think a lot of people understand how many foreign students are actually the organizers of these very violent and chaotic protests that are
Mhm.
happening here in America. And yeah, protest is a constitutionally protected right under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. However, supporting terrorist activity, which is what a lot of these people are doing, incitement to violence is not protected speech. And that is why President Trump is now calling for
Yeah.
Harvard to, well, he actually is forcing them. He's not just calling on it. He's forcing them to not enroll any more foreign students, and he's
Exactly.
demanding that they turn over their lists of foreign students. And their refusal has resulted in them getting cut off from federal funds, and also being, very directly reprimanded by President Trump from the Oval Office.
Yeah, 31% of Harvard students seem to be coming from other foreign nationalities. So I think
Yeah,
that's a
and
huge
during
issue.
and during the swearing-in ceremony today at the Oval Office for Janine Pirro, who's now the U.S. Attorney in
Janine
D.C.
Pirro.
Pirro, yes,
Love her. Yeah, love her.
excuse me, Janine Pirro, excuse me, Janine Pirro is going to be doing a fabulous job. Great woman, somebody who's highly qualified. I've known her for years. She's fantastic, highly intelligent, and I think she's going to be a fantastic U.S. Attorney in D.C. Uh, they didn't really have any questions for Janine Pirro, but they were asking President Trump about his actions against Harvard and his actions against these Ivy League institutions. And he said today from the Oval Office that he would like to see the number capped at 15%. He doesn't think that the
I
number
heard
should
that. Yep.
exceed 15% of foreign students who are admitted by these Ivy League institutions. And personally, I think that 15% is still pretty high. I mean, I don't. There's a lot of American students that would love an
Exactly.
opportunity, or
Hmm.
at least used to, would love to have, attended one of these Ivy League institutions before they became hotbeds of Marxism and hotbeds for radical Islamic terrorism. But it's these universities are essentially businesses in their own accord. Where Harvard, for example, has a $52 billion endowment. Right,
Yeah.
this is a business. This is an enterprise that they
It's an
have
enterprise.
going on. So it's a full blown foreign enterprise where you have oligarchs and you have the children of diplomats and you have the children of foreign leaders, dictators, right?
Yep.
Even Xi Jinping
Yep.
himself,
Yep.
literally,
Yep.
his daughter
Yep.
actually attended Harvard, believe it or not. And his daughter had protection from CCP PLA guards who are still protecting her in the Massachusetts area where she lives with her husband. So Harvard loves to talk about how they're, so concerned with fascism and they're anti-Trump and the actions of President Trump are allegedly fascist, but they have no problem, allowing for the children of communist dictators and African warlords to send their children to these universities where they're getting education and they increase the price of the tuition because, well, they can afford it. But, that is then funding the enterprise of
Yeah.
these corrupt Ivy League institutions. And you've seen in many instances that they've completely renamed some of their science
Yeah.
buildings,
They
their
did.
libraries off of foreigners who just write them very large checks for $10 million, $20 million. And, nothing's free, right? There's no
Uh-huh.
such thing as a free
Mhm.
donation. Everything comes with, some conditions, whether it's putting the donor's name on the building or, you know,
Mhm.
having lenient policies
Mhm.
towards certain activities on campuses, including Marxist,
Uh-huh.
communist, pro-jihadi activities.
I think that's why they're fighting against Trump. They want the money flowing in, but it's not just happening in Harvard or Yale. It's happening across country. Like even here, the UC schools, they are bringing in all these foreign students because of money. So the students here in California, they have to find
Yeah.
somewhere else to go. So
I
this,
mean, it happens everywhere. I went to
yeah,
boarding school for high school, and even on this tiny little ranch school that I went to that had 300 students total, half the students were from Korea, or in China. No joke. I went to boarding school with a lot of Korean students, and it was in the
they
middle of
send them
nowhere
there.
in the
They do send
desert
them
in
there. Yeah,
Arizona. And so literally, half of the students who I went to school with were foreigners. They were from
yeah,
China, they were from Korea, and they were from Turkey,
yeah.
and they were from Egypt. There are a
Mhm.
lot of they were all either Asian or Muslim. So,
Exactly.
I
And
mean, this has been, and that was years ago. I mean, look, I finished college 10 years ago, and then before that, right, I was in boarding school for 5 years, and so this has been going on for a very long time. And
exactly. And Trump is the right person to stop this because I think this is insane. It's going to, and it's not just that they love America. If they love America, that's a different situation. But most of them, a lot of them, and I know a lot of Koreans who can't stand America, are coming over here. And I think they shouldn't. If they hate America so much, why don't they go to China and go to Beijing University rather than Harvard or Yale? And I think
yeah,
it's a tragedy. But I would like to say the presidential election, you are actually correct that it's on a Monday. It falls on a Monday in America, but in Korea time, it's on June 3rd. So it's a Tuesday, but
okay.
yeah, but hopefully the Conservative Party wins. You talked about the vetting process. I thought that this time around it did get better. Like Trump Jr. and Eric Trump they had a more active role in vetting these people, but somehow they get inside these cracks. And you made international headlines when you talked about, weren't you the one who broke that it was Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor, who brought in the Signal chat, who brought in Jeffrey Goldberg from the Atlantic magazine. You broke the news, right?
I didn't break the
Oh, you
news,
didn't break the news?
but I'm the one that highlighted the fact that his deputy,
I
Alex
saw it
Wong,
from
helped
you.
him set up the
Hmm.
chat. So I did break the part about Alex Wong,
Alex
and
Wong.
then
Yeah,
I
yeah,
further
exactly.
exposed Alex Wong as well. So, and then of course that led to me having an Oval Office meeting with President Trump, and then everybody knows what happened. What happened next? Multiple officials from the NSC and the NSA were fired, and rightfully so. But again, I would say the vetting situation is better this time around, but it's still bad. Just because it's better doesn't mean that, we should just turn a blind eye and say, well, it's better than what happened in 2017. Yes, it is better, but it could also be a lot better. And there
Hmm.
are some very concerning examples. I mean, even in our own private conversations, there's a lot of examples that we've uncovered of Biden holdovers in key positions.
Exactly.
And they might even just seem like very innocuous positions, but they're going to have very long-term ramifications on our foreign policy. For example, right? The ambassador to Korea, as
Yeah.
you said. So there's a lot of things that are going
Hmm.
underreported, they're being missed, or they're not being given enough attention. And I just think that there should have been a policy that all of the Biden and Obama holdovers were just completely pushed out and removed from the administration because now, right, everybody's kind of in their groove. Everybody has their own tasks that they have to accomplish every single day. And a lot of these people are just going to go undetected.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, right, in the first 100 days, I guess people are more focused and kind of laser focused and zoomed in on the accomplishments or any hiccups within the administration. And now that the 100 days have passed, I sometimes worry, is there going to be as much focus and attention given to the vetting crisis, which,
Hmm.
in my opinion, gets worse on a daily
Yeah.
basis?
But last week, there was a news that came out. National Security Council, 100 plus. Trump fired them. I would think that probably you had some influence to do with it. Did six people get fired regarding the Mike Waltz team with Wong and all together?
Yeah, but there were,
Can you
yeah,
elaborate on that?
after the meeting, yes, six people were fired. And look, I know that there was a total shock to the NSC and the NSA after my meeting with President Trump. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the meeting I had put additional pressure on them to do, extra vetting as it relates to the NSC, which is why we just saw 100 people get removed. But I was also told that a lot of these people who were fired from the NSC are just going to be placed within other positions in the administration.
Hmm.
So we also kind of have a participation trophy mentality going on where people who deserve to be fired are now being placed in other positions of
A U.S.
power.
ambassador,
And
right?
it's like, how are you? Well, some of them, yeah. Like, how are you going to demand accountability and have extreme loyalty tests and get results if you're going to basically just create this culture of, well, if you screw up, you're just going to be shuffled around to another administration role and we're not actually going to fire you. I understand they're trying to contain people from leaking and writing books and the
Yeah,
chaos that
right.
we saw in the first term where people got fired and then they
Yeah, they wrote
became,
books,
some of the biggest
best-selling books.
donors on the other side because they got so pissed off, right? I think that they're trying to contain people so they don't feel like, oh, I gave up my livelihood and I came to Washington, D.C. and now I've just lost everything, right? So that they go and attack President Trump. But I don't think that that's sustainable.
Hmm.
That's not the definition of government efficiency. Sometimes you deserve to be fired, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
you deserve to be fired, and there really isn't another position for you. There's a difference between being laid off and being fired, right? If you
Right.
are being fired because you're not doing your job or you're missing your goals or you're missing the benchmarks, you shouldn't be given another chance. Now, if an agency is folding and you get laid off and you are actually good at what you do and you provide value, then perhaps your boss will be gracious and they will invite you to have another opportunity within the fold. But I don't think that every person who has been fired should be given that opportunity in the Trump administration.
Mhm. In Mike Waltz's case, but if he did it on purpose or Wong did it on purpose, this is like a fireable offense, right? I mean, no matter how you slice it,
I
this
mean,
you bringing
personally, I
somebody
don't
in the
I don't
signal
really
chat.
feel that the position of UN ambassador is really a prestigious position. It's
Yeah.
kind of
Uh,
like
to me, it looked like
getting exiled to
yeah,
Siberia.
yeah,
Really, when you think about it, it's like getting exiled to Siberia.
yeah. because you
Yeah,
can't do anything secret there.
it's a downgrade. Yeah. So it's a way to contain him because he clearly has shown that he's not able to properly vet. I mean, even when he's having the cabinet meetings, the reporters are zooming in on his phone. I don't know if you saw that post that went viral online where it's like, oh, Michael Waltz is on
Oh
Signal
yeah.
again. It's like, well, why does the NSC director not have a privacy screen on his phone?
Yeah, it's just I was just kind of shocked that people on that top would just use Signal like I do. You know, I didn't know that it was just a regular thing. But obviously, Tulsi Gabbard did an interview about it, and she said that when you get out of the department, you know, that's what they use.
Well, I guess it's an approved method of communication, so they communicate on Signal. I was
Mhm.
also shocked when I saw the story originally. I didn't realize that Signal was approved communication at the government, but apparently they said it is. So,
hmm And you know, Bill Clinton, we were talking about Bill Clinton. He brought China in for double World Trade Organizations. That's how China grew. You know, Bill Clinton played a major part on that. Do you think Clinton is still very pro-China in his views? Because I did see one interview where he kind of sounded like he regretted bringing China in or something like that, like years ago. Are they still getting a lot of funds from China? Do you have any knowledge
well,
regarding that?
when you look at historically speaking, if you look at the Clinton Foundation, they have received donations in the
Yes.
past from
Yes.
CCP affiliated entities, and I put my report on
Yeah.
loomer.com. It's my website. You can
Yeah.
check it out
I
and you
just
can
checked
see
it.
for yourself, and you can direct your viewers to read the
Mhm.
article, and
I'll
everything is cited there. So that's something that came up in 2016 too, when President Trump was running against. He was then candidate Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton, and the fact that the Clinton Foundation was perceived as being a slush fund for communists and dictators
yeah.
and nefarious global leaders, right, especially dictators, to funnel money through the Clinton Foundation for the sake of getting favors from either the State Department or influence from Bill Clinton, former US president, or his wife, who was the Secretary of State under Barack Hussein Obama, right, and a
Mhm.
presidential candidate herself. So
Mhm.
um, I would say that, in my opinion, if I were to guess as to why Bill Clinton was there, I think that he was trying to interfere in the election.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he's obviously not rooting for the conservative party, so he's obviously rooting for the leftists who are aligned with the CCP.
Laura, do you think China was actively involved during the 2020 presidential election and last year? And like I'm talking about hacking, changing votes.
Yeah, I mean,
What's your opinion on that?
I'm sure they probably were. I mean, we saw reports out of, I believe there was a story out of Michigan where a student
Yes.
at University of Michigan who was Chinese was arrested for trying to interfere in the election and illegally vote multiple times for Democrats, right? We've seen instances of Chinese individuals, committing mail-in ballot
Yeah.
fraud. So, yeah, I do believe that there are. Efforts within the Chinese community, probably orchestrated by the CCP to carry out voter fraud. When I worked for Project Veritas, I remember I caught one of the Manhattan election
Mhm.
supervisors on video, and he said that the Democrats bust people into Chinese and Muslim neighborhoods, and a lot of these people are committing voter fraud. So, yeah, I think that it probably is happening. We've seen it happen in places like Minneapolis with the Somali community there, another story that we exposed at Project Veritas. And there's a lot of efforts to exploit foreign communities or engage their active participation, right? It's not like these people are victims. To carry out voter fraud. And it is happening. And President Trump realizes it's happening. And a lot of it's happening under the guise of foreign students,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Oh, I just want to come to America and get an education. Well, are you really here to study or are you here to be
Like a spy.
a spy or an operative? And we've seen this before where you have these students from China who are like math and science whizzes and they get accepted into all of these Ivy League science departments and they're working in these laboratories and then they
Mhm.
go back and they give all the information and the
Yeah.
secrets to China and then it turns out that they were actually a spy for the CCP. No, I'm not making this up. I just did an entire show about this last night on my own show, Loomer Unleashed, and we went through examples of students and also professors, right? Employees of Harvard University who were indicted for working with the Chinese Communist Party out of their own biology lab and in relation to Wuhan during
Yeah.
COVID.
Mhm.
So there is a documented pattern of CCP interference, not just on the level of students coming into our country too, but also the overall concept of the fifth column,
Yeah.
right? This idea of the fifth column that
Mhm.
exists here in America, that has permeated every single one of our institutions, where you have Chinese communist operatives embedded within every single aspect of our
Yeah.
society,
Yeah.
including our educational institutions, our banks, and our political system as well. And there are countless examples of this, right? Kathy Hochul had a chief of staff that got
Yeah.
raided, and it turns
Exactly.
out that she was an operative and a spy for the CCP. Dianne
Eric.
Feinstein, who
Mhm.
literally died in office,
Yeah.
had a Chinese
Exactly.
driver who was a
Yep.
spy for the Communist Party.
Eric
So
Swalwell.
there's tons of examples of this, right? There's a million examples of it. You have CCP police stations popping up in New York City.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
There's so many examples of this. It's not a conspiracy
Mhm.
theory. We had a dementia patient in the White House for 4 years who failed to act on this. We had a Secretary of State under Obama who was complicit in this, who allowed for enemies to come into our country, who was engaged in what many believed was a total money laundering scam with foreign nations through the Clinton Foundation. And so now we finally have a leader that's putting America first,
Yeah.
and people who are on the take from these foreigners don't like it because that's how they make their money. They make
Mhm.
their money from protecting rich foreigners who are operating with an America last mindset so that they can push communist, Marxist, and Islamic terrorist ideologies in our country.
Yeah. So the Trump administration, they announced, I think Marco Rubio announced that Secretary of State that they would search people's social media, whether they're Instagram, TikTok, or what have you, that
Yeah,
whether they
and
have
they
any
and they
anti.
should. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're not an American citizen, you're not entitled to our
Yeah.
First Amendment.
Uh-huh.
So if you're applying for a visa and you're going to come here, absolutely they should be searching your social media to make sure that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this has been hitting the news waves right now in Korea. So I'm worried about there are so many anti-America, anti-Trump especially. There's so many anti-Trumpers because most of the media members in South Korea, they're pretty much worship the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN here. So they pretty much translate whatever they spew out. So they grew this anti-Trump without even knowing how much of a great president. I think Trump is one of the greatest president in my view. I put him up in the pedestal of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. That's how much of a great president I think he is. But South Korea especially, don't know anything about it, and they
Right.
have a lot of these anti-Trumpers growing it. And now they're erasing all these contents. So I'm wondering whether the Secretary of State they would have forensics to figure things out. They would probably change strategically. The left wing party plays really fast and diligently. You know that they're better in this game than us.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And that's why there needs to be task force in every country, in my opinion, to be protecting against voter fraud, because we already saw the impacts of the stolen election here in the
Yeah.
United States in 2020. And this isn't something that's unique to our country. Elections
Mhm.
are stolen all over the world. And if it can happen to the president of the United States, which is supposed to be the freest nation, we're
Mhm.
supposed to be, right? They call us the exporter of democracy, and we're supposed to be the guardrail looking out
Mhm.
around the world and, slapping countries on the wrist every single time they have an election that doesn't really look like it's a legitimate
Mhm.
election, but we can't even protect our own elections or secure our own elections. And it is kind of funny. I remember after the stolen election of 2020, it was Vladimir Putin who said, "Oh, well, how is the United States State Department going to criticize me for elections in Russia when they're
Yeah.
stealing the election from President Trump?" And it was pretty
You're
crazy
right.
hearing this from Vladimir Putin, because it's like he's got a point, right? He actually has a point. How can the United States continue to go around the world and object to the outcome of elections when nobody has actually been held accountable for the stolen election of
Mhm.
2020? And it absolutely was stolen,
Yeah.
100%.
And
I think a
mhm.
lot of people are now starting to finally come to terms with that, especially a lot of people in the media who historically lied and ran cover for the Democrats, like Jake Tapper, who's now coming out
Big
with a
tech.
book to pretend like, oh, yeah, oh, well,
He's
turns
criticizing
out
the left wing
Biden
podcasters
Biden
today.
was sick. Biden was sick. Oh well, he had cancer. I guess maybe he wasn't all there when he ran for office, right? Yeah, maybe that's why they called him Biden hiding in the basement in 2020,
Yeah.
because he was sick. I'm told by
Mhm.
my sources that Joe Biden has had cancer since 2015.
It seems like so, because now he's on
That's what
the.
I'm told. I was told that Joe Biden got diagnosed with cancer in 2015.
So what do we do with all the auto pen executive orders? Can we cancel that out, or is it already a bygone story? I mean, I think, the right wing, the conservative party are sometimes accused of being a conspiracy theorist. I do think there has been conspiracy theory, like even the QAnon movement. By the way, that was a Korean American too, but did you know Ron Watkins, the guy who made that 8chan and spread this? But yeah, but so they always wish, they have this hope that things would there would have consequences. These deep staters would go to Guantanamo Bay, or they would be jailed and prosecuted. But I don't see it happening at all. So far, all the conservative side, all the people who fought for justice were caught into these process crimes. Yeah, for instance, like Paul Manafort. I wouldn't say Paul Manafort is a justice guy, but Paul
I don't
Manafort,
think
all
anybody's going
these
to go to jail. I mean, look, we were told that they were going to be day one investigations.
about
It's
the
way
Epstein.
past day one. I don't really have a lot of confidence in our current DOJ. I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to see more results from Dan Bongino and Cash
I
Patel. I
was
like I
pointing.
like Dan
I,
Bongino
lo- I
and
love
Cash
them.
Patel very much. I love them. I think they're great, but maybe things are slow for reasons unknown. I don't know. I mean, I really honestly worked very hard to help ensure that Cash Patel was confirmed during a
Mhm.
Senate
Yeah,
confirmation hearing, and I really like Dan Bongino, but maybe things just move a lot slower. I don't know, but it just doesn't really seem like there is any
doesn't seem
action being
so.
taken. And it's been very frustrating for a lot of people. And I think it's a morale. It's really kind of a diminisher of morale, which is very dangerous because we're coming up on a midterm election and Donald Trump is not going to be at the top of the ticket.
Hmm.
And so if Donald Trump is not going to be at the top of the ticket in 2026, how are you going to get people excited to go vote? At least people were motivated by the indictments and the arrests
Exactly.
and
You're
the
right.
weaponization of government and lawfare. And oh my God, they
Hmm.
mugshotted the president of the United States. And right, there was like this energy to go out and vote. But we're not going to have that in 2026. So, what are the Republicans doing to support the president's agenda so that we get that same kind of momentum and mandate in 2026? Because look, voter registration doesn't correlate to voter turnout.
Hmm.
There
Yeah,
are people who remain registered for years on end who
and
are
doesn't come
dormant
out
voters
until
and they
yeah.
haven't voted in 10 years, right? We saw that a lot in the 2024 election.
Uh-huh.
I
Do
mean,
are you?
I know this all too well from when I ran for Congress myself, right? You have
Yeah,
low propensity voters and you have high propensity voters.
yeah.
And there's a lot more low propensity voters than there are high propensity voters. When you
Hmm.
look at the overall population of the United States of America compared to how many people actually vote each
Hmm.
election.
You're right. You're right. So, did you have these? I know that you had personal time with President Trump in the Oval Office, and you also mentioned that whenever you were about to talk about like fishy people around him, that people would come in all of a sudden, so you couldn't talk
Well,
about. But
I
do you
just
talk about
I
these do you have these kind of conversations with him? Because it seems like he doesn't
yeah, I
sometimes.
mean, look, I don't want to discuss
Okay,
the contents of my
I got it.
conversations with the president because I feel like it'd be
Yes,
disrespectful.
yes.
But overall, I would say that I have. I mean, it's not a secret. I've had conversations with the president about vetting, and I have expressed my concerns about information being blocked. But look, it's pretty evident to a lot of people that a lot of information that the president should have access to is not getting to him.
Okay.
I mean,
Um.
there was
Yeah.
and it's not just as it relates to vetting either. There was an interview that was conducted with President Trump on the golf course a few days ago, where they asked him about his reaction to a cluster of drones that almost took down Vladimir Putin's
Yeah.
plane in a
And
targeted
that's. Hmm.
assassination.
Hmm.
And President Trump said that he hadn't heard about it. Well, who's supposed to be
Yeah.
briefing him on this, right? So it's
Ridiculous.
not even as it just relates to vetting. There's a lot of things that the president should have access to, and it's the responsibility of the staff around him and his advisors to make sure that he is properly informed about certain issues. I mean, obviously, he's a very busy man. He's not going to be able to sit
Obviously.
there and
Hmm.
track every
Hmm.
single thing every single day. But when information comes out, when people are exposed, when people are found to have done something wrong or a conflict exists or something egregious happens, the president needs to be notified about it. So,
Yeah.
I would have an even greater capability if I was on the inside, but I'm using my
Uh-huh.
position on the outside to continue exposing this and my capacity as an independent journalist and informing people, educating people, conducting my own independent reviews of personnel and, Biden
Yeah, so
holdovers, exposing people. And that's all we can really do,
uh-huh.
unfortunately.
So I understand that President Trump was about to hire you back in like April 1st, that you even filed your papers and we were expecting, but you said there were people inside of the Trump admin that were not happy about you joining the administration. Is that
Yeah, I mean, this has been ongoing for about 2 years now. He first hired me in March of
oh,
2023
he
in
did
his
hire you?
office
Okay.
yeah, he hired me and I filled out paperwork and it was a private meeting with him and Susie Wiles in
Two?
March of 2023 during the primary. And then, obviously the indictments happened and so I kind of like gave it a few days because I thought, oh, they're busy. I was supposed to start on April 1st of 2023. And somebody leaked it, and then the
New
New
York
York
Times,
Times
right?
did a hit. Yeah, they did a hit piece on me, and then that
Why
was it.
listen
Didn't
to
really
the
hear anything
if you're
else. It was kind of bizarre. It was really strange. And then on three other occasions, the president hired me and told his staff to bring me on in a research capacity and to assist with research with the Republican Party, to assist with research for the admin, and all four times it's just been completely blocked by his staff. So
uh-huh.
it's a problem, right? And I'm not the only person this has happened to either. There's other people who have had conversations with the president who have been offered positions and then the staff just kind of block it or they don't follow up.
Okay, so probably it might be, I mean, better for you to advise him as an outsider. Probably if you were
Yeah,
inside,
and
they
look,
might have cut you off
I don't
right
even
right
advise
then.
him. I mean, I have comments and I have concerns and I share information. But I never like to misrepresent myself
Uh-huh.
or over exaggerate, what I do. I wouldn't say that I'm an official
But
advisor to the president. I mean, the president himself said that sometimes I provide recommendations and he listens, but I'm not an official advisor. I just break
yeah,
stories and I'm a loyal supporter of the president and
yeah.
I
So
wish him luck and I wish him success. And I try to use my investigative talents to expose people that are trying
yeah,
to undermine him because I really care about President Trump, not just on a personal level, but also I really do believe that he's the leader of not just our country, but the leader of the world. And if we didn't have President Trump back in the White House, I really honestly thought it was going to be the end of our country.
I
And
think so too.
so,
Yeah,
I'm young. I just turned 32 years old and
yeah.
I want to have a
Uh-huh.
future. And I really do believe that President Trump being in the White House and having a successful second term with a mandate in the House and the Senate is key to preserving Western
Yeah.
civilization
Uh-huh.
and trying to we're never going to be able to go back to normal, right? The
Yeah,
damage has
yeah.
been done,
No.
but
Mhm.
it's an opportunity to at least I
Yeah.
kind of compare
I,
it's like the difference between a slowly burning candle,
yeah.
like a
Yeah.
flame
They
going
kind
back
of
and forth
yeah.
to just an absolute like accelerationist
Yeah.
moment with an explosion, right?
Uh-huh.
I know that ultimately like Western civilization is probably going to decline over
That's
time
what I
because we're
think.
never going to
Yes.
have
I agree with
President
you.
Trump forever, and the pendulum always swings. But at least with President Trump, it's like a slowly burning
Yeah.
candle, like a flame just going back and forth, right? It's just
Yeah. He,
it's
he
it's what you want to choose, like
uh-huh.
low decline with a burst of improvement for the next 4 years with a glimmer of hope, or just complete accelerationism. And I think that we would all
Yeah.
prefer to at
Uh-huh.
least see if we can fix our country with Trump.
Yeah, he put a stop a little bit for the descent of America, but he actually did talk about it during his campaign. When I'm here, it's gonna be okay, but I think when I leave the office, it's gonna go back to where it used to be. He did kind of mention it during the first cycle, the 2016 presidential
Yeah, and
cycle.
he's right. I mean, look, Republicans don't know how to lead. Look at President Trump having to go to the Republican conference. Like, it's kind of unheard of for a president to have to like go to Congress to go have a meeting with the Republican conference to get them to vote on the bill because you have all these different personalities and they all want to pretend like they're so pro-Trump, and yet like why should a Republican president have to basically, I wouldn't say beg, but show up to give these Republicans essentially a pep talk to encourage them to
Yeah.
vote for the bill, the legislation.
Hmm.
And even then, right, they still don't want to codify the agenda and implement the Doge cuts, right? Doge was a pretty
Yeah.
big part
We
of
will.
the first
Mhm.
push of the first 100 days. Like Elon Musk was, pretty, pretty,
We were
pretty
so
pivotal,
excited about it.
central.
Yep.
And now, right, you see Elon Musk, who could have also been like a big donor to the Republican Party, could have been somebody that they could have, used to have like utilized, right, as an asset in their war chest, not just of dollars, but also in terms of infrastructure and information. And you look at the technological innovation that Elon Musk is capable of doing, and it just seems like the Republicans have kind of burned that bridge in a sense because, well, they're not
Yeah.
codifying the Doge cuts in the budget. So. And we saw President Trump was asked about it today in the Oval Office and what he thought about it. And he's like, well, listen, we have to get the votes. And so what that tells me is, well, you have to get the votes. Well, that means that certain members of the Republican
Yeah.
Party didn't want to support the Doge cuts
You're
because they
right.
wanted to have
You're
more
right.
spending. And they
You're right.
probably threatened to not vote
Uh-huh.
for the bill if the cuts were implemented.
Yeah, so
So,
we can probably never fix this, and probably that's why Elon Musk said that he's not going to be as much involved anymore and donate as much to political causes, I think, which is a huge disappointment. One of the most exciting moments so far, 4 months in, was the Doge cuts, getting rid of these yeah, I mean, these left-wing lunatics are so hell-bent on transgendering all the people, not just in America, but around the world. They were giving like money for these comic books in Peru or, about transgendering. And it's just ridiculous how these money was wasted. And if it wasn't for Doge, we would not have even known about it. But to see Elon Musk and to see the big, beautiful bill just go through with a bigger deficit, right? It's going to bring bigger deficit. It is disheartening, and I feel like probably this is if probably this is the best that we can do. Now I'm,
yeah, I mean, I don't think that you're ever going to have a bill with the current state of affairs in our
yeah.
country that isn't going to lead to more debt, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that's kind of the situation that we're in this country, but it's probably the best that we're going to get, right? And I hate to
Mhm.
settle, but the reality is President Trump really wanted this bill to pass. And unfortunately, you have different factions within the Republican Party, and it takes a lot of finagling and massaging to
Uh-huh.
get all of these people to work together to actually pass a piece of legislation. I mean, let's be honest, most of these Republicans don't even like Donald Trump.
I think they don't. I mean, I can
They
tell
don't. They
you
resentfully they
yeah, no,
resentfully
they don't.
vote for what
Even
he
in
wants, but they don't
yeah,
like him. I mean, how many of these
uh-huh.
people actually
I can
supported
tell
him
you
during
that.
his trial and his indictments, and
I
how
can
many
tell
of
you
them
that.
actually came out and
Yes.
you know wholeheartedly endorsed him
Uh-huh.
when he
Exactly.
was first announcing his
Yeah.
reelection run.
Uh-huh.
So
You're right. Yeah, many elected officials here in California, they didn't, even though they're Republican Party, they didn't like him. And that was very disheartening for me to see it too. So I think there's like a MAGA
the
movement
the
separate.
California GOP literally tried to steal the primary for Ron DeSantis and then I exposed their secret rule change and
Uh-huh. You're right.
it became a
I
viral
remember that.
story. They literally tried to sway the primary for Ron DeSantis because California has the most GOP delegate votes
Yeah.
at the convention.
Do you think President Trump came to realization that there's a limit, even though as much of a monumental figure that he is a game changer in politics, and this MAGA movement, we've never seen anything like it. Do you think he also knows his limit because his first term, he saw all these legal challenges and all these rhino people still there in the apparatus, that there's a certain limit that I can do, but I can only bring it to probably if there's a 100-meter dash, I can only bring it up to 50 meters, and it's up to the other MAGA people like you
I
and
mean,
other
I don't
people
I
to
don't
bring
want
it
to
all the
speak
way to
for
the
the
finish line.
president, but I do think that he probably realizes now that it's give and take with a lot of these people,
Yeah,
and unfortunately, you have to compromise with some very distasteful people. And President Trump, he's the master of the art of the deal, right?
yeah.
He's the master of deal making, and so I think maybe now. He's probably a bit more diplomatic than he was in his first term. I didn't have a problem with the way he was during his first term,
I loved
but
it. I loved it.
I think that he is probably more diplomatic or willing to forgive certain people, even if he shouldn't, right? Like some of the people that he issues endorsements for or true social posts for, it's a little cringeworthy. Like I love the president, but it's like, oh, Mr. President, this person said this about you and they supported you going to jail and they voted to impeach you. And I guess at the end of the day, he needs their votes. It's not like we have
Yeah.
a large majority right now. We have a very slim majority in the House, and we have um, a small majority in the Senate
Hmm.
too. And so I guess not everything can be entirely
Uh-huh.
personal. President Trump
Hmm.
constantly says he doesn't trust anybody, and nor should he trust anybody. But I think that reality is a lot different from probably like what you may think or feel on a personal level. Like maybe deep down he knows that a lot of these people are not trustworthy or
Uh-huh.
they're pieces of shit
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
as it relates to being disloyal and anti-Trump. But
Yeah.
when reality sets in, it's like, well, we don't have a large majority, so how many people are
Right.
you going to alienate, or are
Right.
you
You
just going to
can't.
kind of
I
like turn a
mean,
blind
you're
eye
right.
and get their votes, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because there's no reason why they shouldn't like President Trump. He's a generational leader. He's amazing. He's the most
He's very
influential president
likable.
of my
You're right.
lifetime.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I can't really think of many things that I don't agree with him on. There's certain things that I don't agree with that I'm, outspoken about.
The
But
Qatar,
for the
the Qatar
I
ship,
mean,
the
but I
flight
mean, look,
issue.
I
I
had
understand.
conversations about it, and I guess I understand the reasoning behind it. I understand the
I think he
president
was
wants to save
bashing
our.
Boeing. That's what I think. He
He's
was
trying
bashing
to
Boeing
he's
in an
trying to
indirect
save
way, right?
he's trying to save our country money. I understand it. I just personally am not really a fan of a lot of these
I
Islamic
know. I
nations.
know.
Like
Uh-huh.
maybe I should put my own personal feelings aside because President Trump's never going to do anything that's going to jeopardize our national security. So I mean, I even publicly apologized. I said, look, I think I spoke a bit too soon on that one. And I regret any way that my statements were weaponized by the dishonest liberal media to attack the president because I would never want to
No, I think
attack the president. I
no,
support the president.
I think it kind of made you look legit and independent, Laura, in all honesty, even though, it's not like you can, just stamp on everything what Trump does. Of
Well,
course
and I
there
stand by
has
what
been
I
I
said,
had a lot of
but
issues with him in the first
the
term
media
about the
lied.
appointees, yeah.
Yeah, like I still stand by my criticisms of Qatar and what I said,
Yeah.
but the what I didn't like is that the media said, "Oh, Laura Loomer's done with Trump." Like they
I
tried to
know.
print these very
But
sensational
don't,
headlines
but I don't
to
think
make
I
it
don't think
look
you
like I
should be.
was done.
They have been
Yeah.
doing that for everybody around Trump, who has been
Yeah,
press
but it was
conference.
dominating the news cycle and it was a distraction. And obviously I can't control what the media decides to say and how they decide to twist my words. But that was probably my only regret about it is that, I support what the president's doing and I support his efforts to try to, stabilize the Middle East and get us out of conflicts. But
Yeah.
it was just a shame that the media decided to twist what I thought was like
Uh-huh.
a legitimate criticism of Qatar into a nasty attack on President Trump to make it look like, oh my
I
God, she's
no, no,
done
no.
supporting the president.
I
And
didn't I did I mean probably because I'm on more of the conservative side, but I took it as, you have your own opinion, and I think it's a legitimate criticism, I think, regarding the Qatar being your criticism about Qatar is being they were funding a lot of terrorist group, right? And you
well, they also
yeah,
support a lot of the funding of these foreign students
yeah.
that President Trump is
Uh-huh.
calling out. So that's
Mhm.
the reason why I was so
Yeah.
critical is because, 2 weeks prior to that trip, President Trump had signed an executive order requiring universities to
Sure.
disclose the
Yeah.
sources of the
Uh-huh.
foreign funding.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at the source of a lot of the foreign funding, it's from Saudi Arabia, it's from Qatar, right? The two biggest countries that are donors. It's not Israel, despite what a lot of people say. It's Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And so when you look at a lot of the anti-Trump movements, the Muslim Brotherhood movements, the jihadi Palestinian movements here in America, guess who's funding it? Qatar, right? It's not Israel, it's
Uh-huh.
Qatar. So that was it. It's just that, and I
Uh-huh.
understand that the president has to have these conversations with leaders,
Yeah,
despite how
yeah.
distasteful they are, right? I mean, look, he shook hands with the
I,
new leader of Syria,
yeah.
and I voted for President Trump because I trust that he is going to, be the best leader for our
Hmm.
nation. So
Hmm.
I trust whatever vision he has. But I also, at the same time, think that we need to have a serious conversation in this country about the Islamification of the West
Uh-huh.
and the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood here in America. So that's all I was really trying
Yeah.
to say. But
And I think
that's
President Trump, even during his businessman years, he had a lot of business deal with these Middle Eastern countries. I remember him talking about, Arab Emirate, Saudi Arabia, having business deals there in Qatar. And he even made fun of like even Qatar, you can call it Qatar or Qatar, and he was talking in a very friendly way because he had some business deals back in the day. So I understand why he, accepted that flight. And I thought that that was more of a criticism of Boeing not being able to finish their project in 20, it wasn't it supposed to be already finished, the new Air Force One, but
Well,
it's,
yeah, and it's kind of like it says more about Boeing, in my opinion, than it
yes,
says about
yes,
President Trump,
yes,
because they should honestly be embarrassed about
I
how
know,
they weren't
I
able
know.
to
Uh-huh.
deliver the plane on time for the president.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
like I
Yeah.
said, I think that it was really blown out of proportion by
Uh-huh.
the media.
Yeah, yeah.
In
Ben
terms of
Shapiro
everything
also
that President
criticized him
Trump does,
too. I
I
think
support, I would say like 98.5,
hmm
99% of what Donald Trump
that's a
does.
yeah, that's a MAGA, so nobody's gonna criticize that you're not MAGA anymore. It's just these left-wing lunatics. Do you have personal rapport with Trump Jr. or Eric Trump or other Trump admin? And I know that you said you're friends with Susie Wiles. Just wanted out of curiosity, do you
Yeah, no,
contact with them?
I like
Have
Susie
some,
Wiles very much. I think she's a very nice woman. I get along with her very well. I think she's a, hard worker and a, tremendous role model for women, especially given the fact that she's the first female chief of staff.
yeah,
So I get along great with Susie Wiles. I I know Don Jr. I would say that I've had more communication with Eric Trump than I
Eric.
have with
Okay.
Don Jr.
Uh-huh.
But I've met all of President Trump's children, and I think that that's another testament to
Uh-huh.
how good of a leader he is, because it's not
Yeah.
every day that you see somebody who's a billionaire who has successful children who
Exactly.
all
Exactly.
turned
It's
out
amazing.
very
It's
well.
amazing. It's amazing.
A lot of times, very wealthy people have kids that get hooked on drugs, or
He's a blessed
they're
man.
party animals. He
Yeah.
really honestly, uh,
He's blessed. He's blessed in many facets.
it
Yeah.
obviously there's always outliers, because you can be a good parent and still have a kid that has issues. But
Hmm.
the fact that all of President Trump's children turned out to be very successful, well-rounded individuals is a testament to not just his leadership skills, but also the kind of person he is as a father and grandfather too. So I don't think he gets enough
Uh-huh.
credit for that, but
Yeah.
I think it speaks to
Mhm.
his character, and it's something that I greatly admire about him.
Yeah. When you see the polls for 2028 presidential election, JD Vance is ahead. Do you have some worries about it? He used to be an anti-Trumper, very anti-Trumper back in 2016 presidential cycle, and also him relying on donor money. He's not a rich, self-made man. Is it better for the MAGA people to root for somebody like a Trump Jr., somebody in that, or Eric Trump, somebody who can be a little bit free from the
I mean,
donor
you're gonna
class?
see a lot of people run in 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if majority of the cabinet decides to run for president in 2028. I think it's a little too early, right? I think you're gonna see Tulsi Gabbard jump in. You're gonna see JD Vance. I think you're gonna see Marco Rubio. That's just my prediction. I will say, even though JD Vance was an anti-Trumper for a while, he at least has made amends and
Yes.
has apologized. That's the difference, though, between
Uh-huh.
JD Vance and a lot of these other people,
Yes.
is they
Uh-huh.
pretend to be someone that they're not, and JD actually exercised personal accountability. So I don't have a problem with people saying, I was wrong, I saw the light. But a lot of the people that I'm exposing they don't have that humility or that ability to say, I was wrong, and that introspection, right? So,
Mhm.
we'll see what happens. But hey, not everybody's a billionaire. And I think it would be kind of unrealistic to expect everybody who's running for office to, be extremely wealthy. Although it does, I would say, provide you with more liberty, more freedom, and more liberty and more range to do and say what you want. I think that's why President Trump, when he first ran, was able to be such a successful outsider candidate,
Yeah.
is because he didn't have to rely so much on, special interest groups or donor money, because, well, he's a billionaire,
Hmm.
right? Self-made.
Do you expect James Comey to be charged? James Comey putting out 8647. I also saw that from your
I
post.
don't know. Honestly, he should be, right? But the fact
He
that he
should be.
hasn't,
He should
he
be.
should have been charged for Crossfire Hurricane, right? There's so
I
many
mean,
things that he should
of
have been
course,
charged
and
for.
I think the
So,
Clinton Foundation, fabricating this Steele dossier, all the people involved there, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, we all know these famous, infamous figures who fabricated. They wanted to get into an insurance policy to make sure that Trump would not get elected. And if you flip it, and if the Trump side or the conservative side did this to their side, we would have been charged, right? And
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised that, I mean, especially now with Kash Patel in charge of
Yeah.
the FBI and Dan Bongino, who all railed against these people. I'm surprised we haven't seen any charges. But again, look, I'm hopeful, but I'm not
There,
going to get my
there's
hopes up too
a,
much
yeah, there's
because
a,
as Shakespeare once said, expectation is the root of all unhappiness, and
you're
you know,
right. You know,
we have expectations.
that's really right.
No, it's
Especially
true.
on the MAGA side, especially on the
Yeah.
people who supported Trump side.
So.
I think I mean, it's a depressing
I like
endeavor.
having low expectations, and then I don't have
Exactly.
to go to bed depressed at night.
Exactly, you're
You
right.
know?
And there are a lot of,
Uh,
like on Rumble, I watch Rumble a lot of contents there. And on Rumble, you have these, like X22 and some channels that says, yeah, Trump is in full of control. The military government's full of control. Don't worry. These Democrats are in panic mode. It doesn't seem like they're in panic. I'm now a little bit, but I waited too long. I'm not, holding my breath anymore. And there's a lot of Korean Americans in these deep state apparatus like Bruce Orr, Jeannie Rhee, and I wanted them to be held accountable too. As a Korean American, I mean, it's kind of very sad to see them doing whatever they want. They just spy on Trump campaign, and they're pretty much doing whatever they want. And I don't see anybody going to jail. And on the conservative side, you see some people doing some process crimes, and they just go to jail. Like even like
or
info
people
talk
who
about
didn't even commit crimes. I mean,
exactly.
manufactured crimes. They
And
manufactured everything against President Trump. So,
And yeah, they
I
go
mean,
after these
absolutely.
journalists, like InfoWars, Owen Schroyer. He had to go to jail because of the Jan 6 situation, and people who I know, and it's just disheartening. And I feel like even though Trump is there, the U.S. Supreme Court is 6-3. I mean, sometimes it's 5-4, and 4-5, but still, right? And we have the Senate and the congressional side, but still, it seems like it still feels like the conservative side, the Trump side, is an underdog, you know? Do you get that feeling that even though Trump is in office, it's still an underdog game?
Yeah, because as I said before, most of the Republicans in office don't like him. They're never going to admit it. Some of them have admitted it, but they don't like him. And they are resentfully supporting him and pretending to support him because they need the votes of the MAGA base that overwhelmingly supports President Trump. The MAGA base loves Donald Trump, right? But
Yeah.
they love President Trump more than they love the Republican Party. I mean, I've been a registered Republican my entire life, like my
Okay.
adult life at least. I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to ever register to be a Democrat, but I would love to be an independent or no party affiliate, but I live in a state that has a closed primary election, so I have to be registered Republican. But
Yeah.
it's not like I have a loyalty to the Republican Party. I'm not going to ever vote Democrat, but like, why would I ever be loyal to a party that spends its time and its money working to screw over the MAGA base and screw over the president that I work so hard to help elect, right? That's how most people feel, in my opinion, who are registered Republicans. They don't like the party, they love the man. They love Donald
Yeah,
Trump. And
true. You're right.
that's why the Republican Party is really going to be faced with an existential crisis when Trump leaves
I,
office
I, I
because
think so too.
I think the party's going to die. I really do because there's nobody, in my opinion. I like JD Vance, but I will just say this respectfully. I like JD Vance. I like Marco Rubio. I get along with a lot of these people. There's nobody that has the aura, right? The
Yeah,
aura
you're
or the
right.
charisma
Yeah,
or
of
just kind
Trump.
of like the all-encompassing energy to truly be the heir, right, to Donald Trump. Like
No,
when you think of the massive responsibility that comes with being Donald Trump's heir, like I don't really see anybody who's meeting that moment right now.
there's
There's
nobody.
nobody that comes to mind, no matter how many people I may like or think highly of. There's nobody in this country who could fill those shoes. And I'm not saying
I
that to be
agree. I completely agree. I
confrontational or to
completely agree.
be disrespectful to anybody. I just don't really see a future for the Republican Party
There,
after Trump.
yeah, there's nobody like him. I mean, Donald Trump is a one of a kind, and
He's one of a
Laura.
kind. There's
hon-
nobody like him.
Honestly, I supported him back in early, like around 2005, 2006, when when he was getting prominent with Apprentice, and he would come out on Fox News on a regular basis. And I remember one time when I was watching On the Record by Greta Van Susteren, and he came out and they gave an entire hour interview with him, and he was saying the same things what he's saying now about the trade issues and about the border. And I thought that this guy is really saying something. And I was telling my wife and my friends and even my parents, I think Donald Trump would become one day United States president. I would wish that this kind of person would become a president. So I was kind of like ahead of the curve, so to speak, regarding Trump. And I read a lot of his books, and I knew that he wouldn't back down. You remember the first week when he came out in 2015, June 16th, when he ran,
Hmm.
the whole entire media criticized him about that there were so many rapists, murderers coming from the southern border, and which is true. And when the entire media was against him and everybody was like boycotting him, and they wanted him to resign his candidacy, he said one thing that really moved me. He said that I can never back down in front of truth, and that really moved. So I was so excited, but also at the
Oh,
same.
I was too. I mean, I was working for Project Veritas in New York when he filed, and I remember, I think a lot of people in the office found me to be very obnoxious because I was like, oh, Trump's going to win, Trump's going to win, and I mean, James O'Keefe agreed with me, but some of our colleagues were like, no, I don't think so, and I just remember I was like that really loud mouth going around being
Mhm,
like, yeah, Trump's
mhm.
going to destroy all these people, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I saw it firsthand, so.
so,
I remember watching the White House Correspondents' Dinner when Obama was mocking
you're
Trump, and I was
right.
like, "Oh
Yeah,
man, he's going to run for president,
yeah.
isn't
Oh,
he?"
did you? And he did that, and
And
he
he did.
managed,
He did. I just
and
remember that. It's
he's
like,
just one of a
and
kind.
I
Like,
used to watch Fox News a lot before they, became election deniers and all that. But
too.
when I was watching Fox News back in the day, they used to have like a weekly segment with Donald Trump where he
They
would
did.
call
They
in,
did.
right?
You're
He would
right.
call in,
You're
and I just
right.
remember like loving
Uh-huh.
listening to
Me
him
too.
like talk, and I would just like I used to love listening, and I remember
Uh-huh.
even when I was a kid, like listening to him call in and talk in the morning, and it was always a phone call, right? He would call in from Trump Tower, and they would say on the little caller, the screen, "Oh, Trump from
You're
Trump
right.
Tower." So,
Right.
yeah.
And I remember I didn't miss a single rally because he in his rallies the media there were a lot of reports that the media would not cover about, and he was the one who pointed, like, you remember, like the air conditioning company Carrier about to leave their manufacturing base in Indiana, and he was the only one who talked about these kind of specific situations about companies, tariffs, about like Samsung,
Yeah.
LG. He would talk about how them dumping, their products, or Japanese company. Nobody talked about it like he did, and so I don't see another politician talk like him. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he was like a
There's
blessing.
nobody. I don't think there's anybody.
Yeah, which is kind of disheartening. Laura, can you kind of shortly tell us how your career went? How you ran for your life. People are very, you've been covered by the Korean media, both in Korea and in a Korean American community a lot because, about the Mike Waltz and the Bill Clinton angle. You covered it. You were the
Yeah,
first one
I
to
mean,
cover it.
I
Can you
I
kind
do
of
my
tell your
own. I do
life?
investigative reporting, and I got started. I was the president of College Republicans when I was in college, and I started doing undercover journalism. I studied broadcast journalism and emerging media when I was in college, along with political science. That was my degree. And then I started working for Project Veritas, where I was working undercover, exposing Hillary Clinton as an undercover journalist during
Mhm.
the 2016 election. And I worked for Project Veritas for several years, where I focused on exposing things like election fraud and election integrity issues.
Yeah.
And then I left and I started my own media company and,
Yeah.
started confronting people, lumering
Yeah,
people,
yeah. Loomer,
creating
I know that you Loomered
this
a lot of
new,
people.
yeah,
James Comey especially twice, right?
this new trend of journalism where I would, go confront people and live stream it. And
Awesome.
it's,
That was
and then
just
I ended up
awesome.
getting banned on all social media over
Why
the
did you get
years.
banned? Why did you get banned?
For exposing people, really, I exposed Ilhan Omar for marrying her brother and calling out the Islamification of
Oh,
my
you
country
broke
is
that
really,
story? You broke that
yeah,
story too?
yes, and
Good
the
on you.
Islamification of the country is what really got me labeled as an anti-Muslim bigot and got me shut down everywhere. Yeah.
So, and being anti-Islam was a reason why you got banned, right? Pretty much, right?
That's what
All
they
over the
said,
place.
yeah. And then they shut me down everywhere. My banks, PayPal, Venmo, GoFundMe, Uber,
Wow.
Lyft,
They even banned all that?
Facebook, yeah, everything. I mean, I have a
So,
book that's on my shelf. It's called Loomered: How I Became the Most Banned Woman in the
I, I,
World,
I'm-
and
I'll check
it's
that out.
literally about how I was really the canary in the coal
Wow.
mine for all the censorship. Yes,
So are
correct.
you banned more than Alex Jones and
Yeah,
are you
Alex
like
Jones
you go hand
actually
in hand?
said, Alex actually said on his show one day that I'm more censored than he is.
Yeah, because when I watch your interviews, I was trying to even find those comments, but I don't see you being, like a bomb thrower or anything. You were talking about everything based on facts. I mean, you have this
No, they
famous
completely lied
speaker.
about me. They completely lied about me and tried to demonize me.
Laura, what I do not understand is when Trump wanted to hire you, and you said there was a New York Times piece that reported about it. How come Trump is caring about whatever the New York Times is saying? You know, the New York Times was at the forefront of this Russia
I don't
collusion
think he really
fabrication
cares.
stories.
I think it's the staff, right? I think that President Trump's a very busy man. He doesn't have time to be
Okay.
handling all of, the paperwork and all of the HR stuff. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know
Because
because I don't know why this was never dealt with. I really honestly don't know. But I think the president knows me quite well to know that I'm not what the media says I am, and I'm one of his biggest defenders. And
uh,
I think it's really just professional jealousy at the end of the day, if we're being
okay.
honest. I think that there's some people who work for him who just are a little bit jealous.
Were you at the Acorn expose when you were doing the Project Veritas? Why did you leave
No,
that?
I wasn't a part of that expose.
Okay, okay, but you felt like you wanted to go independent. That's why you started your
Yeah,
own
I just
thing.
wanted to go independent. I mean, I get
Okay.
along great with James. He was just on
Uh-huh.
my show last week. He wrote the
Yeah.
foreword for my book. We get along great. He's like a
Uh-huh.
brother to me,
Uh-huh.
a mentor. But I just wanted to start my own company, wanted to do
I
my own
understand.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, same as me. And can you talk about your Laura strategies?
Loomer
Loomer
Strategies.
Loomer strategies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I launched a
Loomer.
full-scale
Yeah.
opposition research executive level vetting firm, and we do opposition research and vetting so that we can help people with their vetting concerns and their research needs. And
Uh-huh.
I'm looking
Got
forward
it.
to working with a wide range of clients, especially as we head into the midterm elections.
Great. And Laura, are you still banned in like Facebook and Instagram too? Because I would think that
Yeah,
they would revive it since Trump is back in office. You know what I'm saying? So what I
you
don't
would
understand
think.
is many Koreans in South Korea and also many Korean Americans here are also being suppressed. Like me, I'm demonetized too, by the way. I'm the only
Yeah.
demonetized guy on the conservative side. And I would wonder, they would kind of change their tune. And now they're facing also an antitrust law violation suit, and they lost actually, I think, in the appeals court
Yeah,
now.
I mean, I filed my own antitrust lawsuits as well, and unfortunately, it's really hard to get justice in this
Yeah.
country. But yeah, I'm still permanently banned.
I filed a lawsuit too against YouTube, by the way, because of their demonetization and whatever. That's why I think in South Korea, I think Trump does a trade deal, now they're in this 90-day moratorium situation,
Hmm.
but they're gonna continue. I think Trump should kind of have these talks about Google, be just opening up these practices of if you're anti-Trump, it's just what, it's open season. You get algorithm, it props you up. But if it's pro-Trump, like my content, anti-establishment, they suppress it and they demonetize. And when you get demonetized, it doesn't get into your recommended channel
Hmm.
or programs. So I think Trump should also think more globally. I think he is getting more involved, but I think many Koreans in South Korea, they wish that Trump would kind of intervene, even in the election process because
Right.
it's so taken by CCP. I think CCP took over most of the establishments there in Korea, the whole apparatus. So they are feeling helpless. The conservative side, they are feeling helpless. Many of them are crying out for help because South Korea is an ally of America, right? Without America, South Korea would not have happened. So many Koreans want Trump to somehow intervene and help them out with the voter fraud, especially the voter fraud situation.
Right.
But what do you think? Do you think they're just hope it's gonna be just a long hope without any results this time around
I
too?
mean, we'll see, right? There's a lot of election interference that happens all around the world, including here in the United States. I'm really hoping for the people of South Korea that the conservative movement wins, but there's so much influence and so much money from China and the CCP and so much interference, and I that's what I think Bill Clinton was in South Korea for. So, I mean, it's going to be very dreadful, not just for the people of South Korea, but for Asia as a whole, if the leftists win in South Korea.
Mhm. Laura, where can we see your work? Where can my viewers check out your work? Loomer Strategies and
Yeah,
also
so
on X,
well,
you have
Loomered
1.4 million
Strategies is just on
followers.
X, but people can follow my X account at Laura Loomer and also at Loomer Unleashed, and then I'm also on Rumble, rumble.com/Laura Loomer. That's my channel. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I have a show on Rumble at
Okay.
9 p.m. Eastern. I also have a book, Loomered: How I Became the Most Banned Woman in the World.
Yeah.
And then I'm also on Substack,
Okay.
lauraloomer.substack.com. People can subscribe to my Substack or they can review my content and my news articles on my website, loomered.com. So I have a couple different platforms that I use, but
Okay, I'll
those are
put
the
it
main
all
ones.
up there, in the comment section so that everybody can check it out. Laura, thank you very much. It was an honor. I know that you are a truth seeker, and I mean, still, you are a very influential person. Because of you, we could find these probably they were potential deep staters, right? These the Signal Gate, and so
Yeah,
I
big
think
time.
that yeah. Any last words you want to say?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you're doing as a Korean American to support President Trump and everything that you're doing to bring truth to the people of South Korea. I know you told me that you're fighting the fake news and the deep state there too. So just never give up, right? That's my message
Yeah,
to people
never give
there.
up.
If we can defeat the deep state and the fake news media here in the U.S. and get Trump back in for another term like we did, nothing is impossible. People thought that was going to be impossible, right?
Right.
With the level of attacks he was subjected to. It's the greatest political comeback
It
story in
really
American
is.
history, and
Hmm.
miracles like that can happen all around the world. So
Okay.
never,
Mhm.
ever, ever give up, as President Trump says.
You think we can win the midterm, the Republican side? You're.
I hope. I mean, I honestly think we're going to lose,
Oh, you
not
think
because of
so?
President Trump, but because a lot of these Republicans are demoralizing the base by not getting results, by not codifying President Trump's agenda. But I hope I'm wrong, right? Like, I love being right, but I hope I'm wrong when I say that Republicans are going
Okay.
to lose the midterms.
So who's the Congress members that you do like Brandon Gill? Who are the
No,
ones
he's
that
great.
you?
I mean, look, it's not about liking people, right? I don't really care about like people's personalities and whether I like
I
them. It's
know.
about whether they do their job,
I'm talking
right?
about
Like,
firm people. Like if they can't be Trump level firm,
well,
but
there's
at
not
least
many.
them.
There's really not many. I hate to say it, but it's hard to really think of any because the moment that you give somebody a compliment, the next day they go and they do something that's going to
So
disappoint you.
what?
So,
Yeah, Matt Gates, we have all supported him becoming the attorney general. And Pam Bondi, I felt was not might not have been strong as Matt Gates, but there has been like reports about even like Mossad behind trying to bring him down, or I don't know whether that he was brought into a honeypot scandal. Did you hear anything regarding that? Because it seems like
no,
these
I mean
hardcore
nothing that
people.
was substantial, nothing that
Okay,
really was confirmed. I mean, obviously there's a lot of rumors on the internet, but nothing that really ever came to
okay,
fruition.
okay. Thank you, Laura, and we would like to bring you back soon.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Love to have
Yeah.
you on my show. Hope maybe sometime next week after the elections, you can come on Loomer Unleashed and
Would love
give us an
to.
update.
Yeah, would love to. Um,